financial report that was included in your agenda. At the end of September, we're running pretty close to where we were last year at this time. The revenue, we're at 14.65%. Last year, we were at 14.63%. This year on expenses, we're at 25.22% of the budget. Last year, we were at 25.85%. We have seen an increase in revenue of not quite $1 million, but close. Sales tax collections are up, fine fees and forfeitures are up, and interest is up. So that's what's contributing to the additional revenue lines there. All the departments are pretty well running where they should. We're 3 months in, so 25% is about where they should be, and most everybody's right there. On the 15 splice, we didn't have any expenditures for the month of September. For the 21 splice, we had $842,484 in expenditures. And just an update on where we are on the 997 project. I went ahead and looked into October. We've really completed all the expenses for moving, and I think all the invoices are in at this point. So our total out-of-pocket expenditures $134,619. I don't have the public works hours at this point, but we're working on getting those together, so we'll know exactly what we've got going on there. And then we continue to work on the fire station, about $9,000 in expenses there. We got the body to go on the animal shelter vehicle for about $18,000, and then we had road maintenance supplies of about $51,000, and then we had $20,000 related to the multi-purpose field that we continue to get going out at the rec department. So that's about where we were at the end of September.
Sir, I'm assuming on the move, one of the things that's probably ongoing a little bit is the utilities. I mean, which may not change. They could be less or more, but they'll probably have to be over there a while for us to see how that's comparing to the old.
Well, we got more square footage, so the utilities are going to go up when you compare that campus to the College Street campus. But at some point in the near future, we should be cutting utilities off at College Street until we work into getting temporary power, which will go into the construction of the building over there.
Right. Thank you.
Well, if there's no further questions, we'll move you into number 2, which is the budget amendment notice of publication.
We're at the end of the year where we do our budget amendment to cover the funds. Most of the funds are outside of the purview of the finance department. There are a few, but this is to let you know that we'll be running an advertisement for a budget amendment probably next week. We'll try to get it into them tomorrow, but I don't think they will get it published until next week. The changes that we're looking at here in the Sheriff's Narcotic Fund, we're increasing revenue and expenses by $523,500. In the Hotel Motel Fund, we're increasing revenue and expenses by $22,000. In the Date Fund, we're increasing revenue and expenses by $20,750. Juvenile Court Supervision Fee Fund, we're increasing revenue and expenses by $1,200. Jailhouse Store Fund, we're increasing revenue and expenses by $148,000. Correctional Institute Commissary Fund, we're increasing revenue by $34,500, and the same for the appropriations there. Correction Institute Inmate Education Fund, we're increasing revenues and appropriations by $1,200. The Sheriff's Office Special Projects Fund, we're increasing revenues and appropriations by $53,000. The Magistrate Technology Fund, we're increasing revenue and appropriations by $10,000. The American Rescue Plan, we're increasing revenue by $1,836,364 and increasing appropriations by the same amount. Public Safety Fund, we're increasing revenue by $176,000 and appropriations by the same amount. Opioid Settlement Fund, we're increasing revenue by $10,000 and appropriations by $10,000. So that will be in the paper probably next week, and then you'll vote on this budget amendment on December 5th at the regular scheduled board meeting.
Next, we'll move into 3, the investment option for 2021 SPOS bond proceeds. It's also 10.1 on the agenda for Tuesday night, but we have Gabe Agan here to explain this wonderful opportunity for us.
David Sutton, out of our St. Petersburg office, is the principal RIA that's really been handling putting this program together for you guys and for many of our other clients. So I want to get him on. I'll do the main presenting, but I want him to be able to chime in and be a part of this.
Hey, is this David? Hey, I'm going to put you on speakerphone this evening.
Well, thanks for having me here this afternoon. Good to go over some of these options with you. The last couple of years have been unprecedented in terms of volatility in the municipal markets in general. Especially, I think I'm going to go through the next slide here to go over some of the options here. But as you remember, in May, in fact, it was May 4th, we priced some general obligation sales tax bonds to forward fund some of your SPLOST projects. And the rate locked in at that point in time was pretty much the lowest that you could lock. It was at a 0.47% was your bond arbitrage yield. And the rates at the time for the 1-year bond were between 0.1 and the 0.66 for the 6-year bonds at that point in time. So I did want to give you a little bit of history, how we kind of got to what we're talking about tonight. So there's 2 charts, and what we have here. This is what the market did after you priced your bonds. So they started kind of going up some, but then really January of 2022, the Federal Reserve was a little bit probably behind the curve in terms of policy raising interest rates to contain inflation, but inflation became certainly a focus at that point, and rates started spiking, and to where we are today. You know, back at the time, mortgage rates were in the mid-2s, now around 8%, prime rates 8.5%, so interest rates have gone up a whole lot, they just hit it plainly. As you remember, when we closed that bond issue, the real negative about borrowing money at the time was you couldn't earn very much when you borrowed that money. It's not like a drawdown. We sent that money to your account, and at the time, the Georgia Fund 1, which is a commonly used investment account, earned 0.035%, so 3 basis points, 3.5 basis points. So even though you're paying 47, you're practically earning 0 on that money. But that has spiked to the point now to where you can earn well over 5%. I think Georgia Fund 1 is about 5.4%. And the reason I keep saying Georgia Fund 1, it's just a pretty commonly used county program across the state. It's a variable rate program where the rate changes, are constantly. It's a money market basically. But one thing that you remember back in mid-2022, I know Michelle and I talked some about it, a couple, maybe a month or two ago about it, but at that point, we decided to do a laddered portfolio of treasuries. And the reason at the time is we wanted to, there's three things you want to make sure you do and invest in these funds. One, safety. And you're only permitted to do the safest of the safest investments under the bond documents. The program we're going to talk about, demand deposit slugs, is, it's a fully United States full faith and credit, United States government obligation of the Treasury, so it's the gold standard of safety in terms of investment. Liquid, you don't want to lock this money up and then when you do your admin building and fire station and the other SPLOST projects, have a mismatch, but you can get to these funds, at any time, up to $10 million within 1 day, so they're very liquid. And then the thing we're going to focus a lot on is what's most economically advantageous to you at this point in time. So we're still on this slide here. The demand deposit slugs pays a little bit lower rate than Georgia Fund 1. So right now it's about 4.25%. So well over a percentage point lower. But the thing about tax-exempt bonds is the IRS does not like you to over-borrow and make a profit on this. So there's some spend-down targets to where if you spend the money down in 2 years, you can keep any earnings over and above the arbitrage yield, the 0.47 that I mentioned earlier. But if you don't hit those, you're going to have to pay rebate back. Now, I want to explain, it is not a bad thing to pay rebate. You've already get the projects done, and saying that you have positive rebate means that you earned enough to pay all your interest off of the bond. So right now, you are in a pretty significant positive earnings right now, and the county's engaged a arbitrage consultant firm to track that. There's almost $1 million in last report, so that means you've earned that much over the arbitrage yield. So when you're accruing that much, and it's over $100,000 a month right now that you're earning and above that arbitrage yield, so it's going to keep going higher as you do this. A few months ago, our investment advisor team, David Sutton and his team, and Raymond James, brought this program to my attention. We've done it with some of our clients in Georgia and many across the country, but there's a program called Demand Deposit Slugs that was basically designed to help clients in a situation to where, you could have a rebate situation like you do now, but it really has not been used much over the years. One, for the first, almost 20 years of my career, we really haven't seen many situations where clients owe rebate because we've been in a flat to declining interest rate environment. That has changed. And then, also the earnings have gone up so much, and so you have to have a lot of slower spend down. So basically, if you spent your money quicker, you would not have owed a potential rebate payment. But with the coronavirus, and I know in this case, just the site selection, there's several reasons why things go slower. So what we're trying to do here is to come up with a program to where you're going to have to pay less rebate back on your earnings. And the demand deposit slugs are defined pretty clearly. I know we've had discussions with the bond attorney. Stacy's looked at it. The rebate consultant that's going to actually prepare the report to keep you guys clean when you actually do have to rebate some of these funds back after the bond proceeds are spent, but it's pretty plainly written in the code to where this is a tax-exempt security. So what this will allow you to do, you have about $36.5 million left in the project fund. By transitioning it over to this, you'll get 4.25% earnings, and you won't have to pay that back. So it would be exempt from the rebate is the whole idea of this program here. I'm going to go into some slides. Now, keep in mind, you want to spend these proceeds as fast as you can on the projects that they're intended to. You're not borrowing to make money on this, and you did have an expectation to spend it down within 3 years, but things do go slower. Just document the reasons, and it should be fine here. But Alicia gave me some assumptions just to kind of assume on projected future earnings here that we've looked at on page 3. I'm not going to spend much time on that. That's just the longer you invest, obviously the higher rates, the more potential arbitrage. But in this kind of, I've already covered a lot of stuff. This is a lot of words in this slide, but just the liquidity, the security. But if we get to this part, okay, so assuming, now the rates change every day on this program. So if rates start going back down again, the excess earnings will be less. But, you know, if you stay at this rate that we've kind of run as an assumption right now, at the 4.25, you'll earn about $3.1 million in interest in your project fund. So if it was taxable, you could only earn $330 if you were earning 0.47. So this would be the difference that, you know, how you'd be economically better off by not having to rebate this back to the federal government. So about $2.8 million in difference here. And that's net of the advisory fees that David and our group will be charging on this. And then we also looked at another scenario if rates start coming back down. You know, rates have gone up a lot. Most think that the Fed's close to being finished. They haven't raised rates the last 2 times. So if rates started going back down, you know, 50 basis points every 6 months, you know, the earnings will be lower, but it's still very, very significant, still way above what your bond rate is. So, you know, this does kind of give you a unique opportunity to earn more than what you're paying on these bonds and not have to rebate them back. So, you know, we spent a lot of time betting. I know Alicia's looked pretty closely at it. We've talked, and you know, it's a pretty clean program from what I could tell. And David Sutton, I don't know if you need to chime in, you know, please do so. And we also looked at some options, just different yield, like instead of assuming 4.25, if you earned a little bit lower rate, so 4%, 3.75, but still, I mean, we would have to have an economic disaster to get back to below your arbitrage yield where you locked in. You know, it was really, you guys sold those bonds at pretty much the lowest. So from that standpoint, that's a good thing.
So we're giving up about 1% round figures from market.
Yes, sir, from market, and I'm glad you addressed that, because the demand deposit slugs, and I think everybody always want to ask, you know, why this sounds too good to be true. What's the downside? You know, it is a discounted to current market, so it's about 80%, 79 to 80% of what a taxable money market would be. So yes, sir, it's about 1% lower. But if you have to give everything back over 0.47, you know, if you're earning 10%, it doesn't really matter, because you're just going to have a bigger check to have to rebate back. So, you know, this is, but you're right, it's a little bit over 1% difference in a standard taxable money market versus this.
And what's the total amount of funds we have in that?
About 36.5 million.
Okay. And how long do we have to spend that?
Okay, now here's, and I'll just recite the rules as far as spend down. When you do tax exempt bonds, there's 2 tests. The one that all counties have to agree to is it's an expectations test. It's not something that they're going to come back on you. Things happen, projects go slower, but you have an expectation to spend 5% of the bond proceeds will be 3 years. You're not going to spend 85% of the money by then. But things happen, projects go slower, it's hard to get things lined up. You're not the only one in that situation. it's nothing that you did wrong. You know, you did have the expectation at the time you probably wouldn't borrow the money if you thought you were going to spend it within that period of time. So that's the first test. But then there's a separate test that a lot of folks don't, but if you spend 10% of the bond proceeds in 6 months, 45% in 1 year, 75 in 18 months, and all of it within 2 years. So if you spend it faster, the IRS says, if you spend it that fast, we're not going to make you pay the rebate. So if that situation occurred, if you're, issued at 0.47 and earned 5, you would just get to not rebate back the extra. But those are the two. But the 3 years, the one that you really, and it's an expectations test. It's not something. Expectations are not always what. Now it's different than what it was 2 years ago.
So, Mr. Agan, you're not the holder of the investments. You're just advising us.
And honestly, just.
And some of these questions,
Yeah.
I'm just putting on the record. I don't need you to go for a long step because I've read the information.
Yeah.
And so if we look at what we originally did some months back, basically what the county's objective was to say, let's at least try to make back the interest.
You got it. And that was an excellent, Michelle asked me that same question or close to it a couple months ago when we were talking about this. Why didn't we do it at that point when we did this? The reason at the time was this program did not pay your bond yield, and by doing it in those treasuries, and we thought, the hope was that the projects were going to gain some and get spent sooner. So it was the expectation at the time, because we had negative arbitrage that was built up. We were able to offset all the negative arbitrage by doing that at that point. But still at the time, the demand deposit slug we're in a much different market now.
Right.
So
And so the new program with the demand deposit that we're looking at, and in other words, I'm defending why the county would want to be involved in this program. So now that we've understood that the original program, we were just trying to make back the interest, and now we've seen the projects that continue to be delayed, everything has been built as timely as we would like. And so to me, there's two facets that we're trying to control moving forward. A, how do we not have to pay all that interest back, if you will, in layman's terms, where we can keep some of that? And the reason would be project costs continue to go up. Every day, something is more expensive. And then the other thing is you're playing a gamble with SPOS dollars. If those happen to fall off some and we're able to make some of that up with this money, that would be an advantage for the county as well. So for me, I'm looking at it as a couple of different angles, not only continued cost in construction through labor, materials, whatever the end goal is, but also looking at if there's a volatility in the SPOS dollars falling off, if we're still making some money in another category off of that money that we borrowed, as you say, was in the very low valley at the time. We couldn't have timed that any better. That would be advantageous for the county to take advantage. And I guess the reason I'm making these points on the record is this isn't about trying to hoard money, if you will. It's trying to make good financial decisions because we're living in such a volatile market with construction and cost every day. I mean, if you go to the grocery store, if you go to the gas store, things go up. So I think this continues to be a smart move on behalf of the county to try to do everything that we can to leverage any income to offset the additional expenses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And in terms of, we're talking to a lot of folks, projects in general have been going slower than in the past. And there's no science, but just general observations from seeing stuff. Obviously they're more expensive and seem to be going a bit slower than in the past. But, this is just unique. But this is probably one of the ones that's the highest value added to you guys versus some of our other clients. Because, there's some that may have locked in at 3% and they got $20 million left. So it's still worth doing. It's still economically positive. But we're talking, a spread of, 3.75% that you're making on $36 million. So that's real. But I know that's kind of the reason we've been. I never want to be pushing on something, but I think we're talking real dollars the longer that you're in this program, and I think everybody's comfortable with it. So I think you're right.
Well, Gabe, you did a great job
Yeah.
explaining that.
And David, you got anything to chime in? I just, he does this specific, like, every day with, you know, dozens and dozens of our clients across the country. But David, you got anything to add to that, or?
Yeah, Dave, can you hear me all right?
Yes, sir.
Great. Yeah, just a few additional comments. Yeah, I think what you've indicated, Gabe, is exactly correct in the sense that you know a lot of clients are in a similar position. You know, selling bonds either during COVID or just after the worst of it. You know, it's slowed down a lot of projects. We've seen a lot of rebids and that sort of thing. But simply put, you know, the fact that, you know, this opportunity came along because of the short, sharp increases from the Federal Reserve, unlike rate increases that have been seen not since 1994. And to us, given your all's amount of unspent proceeds, and being in a position where once you reach the 2-year point, every dollar that you earn is going to have to be paid back to the U.S. Treasury. That those two facts combined to create the opportunity before you. So it seemed to us to make sense to bring it to you to identify the fact that you'd be better off earning less than you could in a taxable investment, but being able to keep 100% of it than earning maybe 1% higher, but being able to keep 0 of it. And so that's the essence of the idea in a nutshell.
And one thing I didn't talk a lot about is actual, the agreement where we, through our investment advisors, will be advising you through this. You know, David and his team will prepare like a quarterly report just showing, you know, the RBO, which earns be how much kind of extra you're getting to keep you by doing this program. And then also they'll be kind of actively managing. Like I mentioned, I think it will be very, very unlikely that you're going to ever, that things are going to get to where you're going to earn less than 0.47 in this program. But if they did, just like you mentioned, you could have better earning options. So if we just had a financial disaster, you know, like COVID would, or just something totally unexpected, and Fed took rates back to 0, we could get it and move this money back to, you know, the taxable equivalent. But that's very unlikely, and kind of part of what, you know, David's team is going to be monitoring here for you too. So,
Mr. Hagan, I did have a question on that topic. So I read, and I don't, without trying to go back to the documents, but basically there was 2 tiers that you were charging on the percentage of the fee, and I think it was at 0 to 25 million. So if we're looking, and then there was another amount past that. So I guess if we're looking at the 36.5 million, are you talking about putting that into 2 different bracketed amounts, or why would you be showing us 2 different tiers if we know we've got the 36.5 million left?
Well, it's keep in mind you're going to spend that down. So you know, hopefully you'll spend this money down fast, and you're going to be in that 25. But it just
so it changes over the period, or is it locked in?
No, that's these funds. You know, right now it's 36.5, but you're spending this money before any of your other proceeds, or any swaps. These are arbitrage restricted dollars.
But I'm talking, the question I'm asking, I understand that it's going to be spent down, but what I'm talking about is in the document. So as the money is spent down, you're saying your fee will change with that as well, depending on when it lands in that particular bracket. Okay.
And it's just kind of tiered because really, you know, it's, you know, a higher amount is not really more work. so it kind of goes down once you're up above that level. But it describes it pretty clearly.
Thank you.
You're right. Yeah.
So it's a lot of information that you received on Monday in the agenda packet. A lot of information Gabe just gave us with a great explanation. I think I've worked you over for a couple months so that you could get it just right for us.
That's okay.
So, you know, I'm welcome to put this on a consent agenda, but I understand if we want a little bit more time to study it and leave it on Tuesday. if you want to leave it on Tuesday, my question is, do you need Gabe to come back, or are you good with maybe trying to call him tomorrow or Monday? So I think I just threw out a bunch of questions there, so I guess I'll start with, are you good with putting it on a consent?
I don't see any other more viable alternative.
All of y'all are good? Okay, so,
I'd like to add one thing.
okay.
So if we're in agreement to do this, I would like to get an opinion letter from our bond attorney, Barnes Murray. I feel like based on what I've read, that it fits that, but I would like an attorney's opinion on that. And so that fee's about $3,500. So in addition to you approving Gates fee, I would like that fee approved also. And that would come out of the proceeds of our earnings. But I think that just gives us some long-term justification. If the IRS ever does ask a question, we got that to stand on.
So we want to add that to, under 10.1, we want to add, Stacy, how do we want to word that, $3,500 to include that?
This is to include the bond counsel opinion for $3,500.
Okay, to include bond counsel fees.
And I'm not just, but I do one thing I didn't mention, and David will chime in here, but since he's worked with a lot of folks, I think there's at least a dozen, throughout the just well-known reputable bond counsel firms that have given this their blessing. So this is something that's been vetted pretty heavily. It's not something that I think anybody from the legal perspective has any concerns about. But yeah.
Great, so Linda, you'll...
Yeah, that's right, Gabe. The language identifying the fact that earnings generated from demand deposit slugs are exempt from rebate it's bright lined in and laid out clearly within the IRS regulations. And you're right, we've worked with, I think we're at like 13 or 14 different law firms around the country, and each of them has concurred in terms of the interpretation of the regulations with respect to that.
Some of the legalese and stuff, you'll have to read 3 or 4 times. I still may not, but this is pretty straightforward. my little brain to grab this pretty quick.
So I'll have Linda update the agenda tomorrow, and we'll put this on consent, but you always do know things can come off consent. If you change your mind, you start reading through it again, but at this point, we'll put it on consent. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to Alicia or Stacy or Gabe. I just want to make sure we don't make you drive back for any reason, but then I also want to make sure that if we don't want to leave it if you're not here. So at this point, we'll plan on Gabe not coming back unless I hear differently from y'all on like Monday or something.
And just kind of timing wise, and Dave, you correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's a pretty quick process. So like if you guys do approve going this route on Tuesday, we'll get authorization form to regions or custodian the funds, and they'll get this process going pretty quickly. So it'll just transfer over to the project fund account there. So it'll be pretty quickly.
I guess my question, Madam Chairman, for Ms. Blackman is if we're asking bond counsel to write a letter, we are essentially asking them to give their blessing, approval, an advisement, or some form. So I guess what I'm saying is the reality is if we're asking for that, would we not need to know that that is in fact going to happen as an exaction before we're consenting that the very thing we're asking a secondary opinion on?
I've spoken with the bond counsel informally, and they said they do agree that this is an allowed investment and that they would be glad to give that opinion letter. So but they didn't want to do the work until you made sure you all wanted to proceed.
Okay.
So,
Will that be a separate item that we'll vote on, a separate agenda item?
I think the finance director wants it all contingent,
So I think
all simultaneous.
We'll write it in there as to include bond counsel of $3,500 and the approval, I guess the approval of bond, or the recommendation, with a positive recommendation by bond counsel.
Right, contingent upon
Yeah.
the receipt of the bond counsel opinion.
And I'm fine with everything. I'm just simply saying, as someone voting behind the dais, I don't want to consent to something that technically I'm waiting for an additional document to say in writing that this other firm is making a recommendation. Now that, I'm just a matter of formality, of not getting ahead of ourselves before that document's even created.
And I can certainly I've spoken with the bond attorney, he said he's willing to get the letter, and I can call him after this work session and see how quickly he could get that to us.
That's what I'd like to see. I'd like to have that in place.
Okay.
Before we vote on it.
Just a thought, if you want to avoid, it could be crafted in a way where, the chairman could execute or contingent on acceptable opinion from, just so you have to, another month, another $110,000, whatever.
I think if Stacy can get that letter pretty quick, we can deal with that little stuff on Tuesday, so, we'll let the month, but you're right, adding that contingent, it's one thing to pay the $3,500, if it comes back negative, we don't, so the contingency of approval, I'm pretty certain that we can get that letter pretty quick before Tuesday, so.
Just throw this out, but if, Stacy, you're saying the bond attorney's fine with it, he'll write the letter. If you're saying your firm has dealt 14 times with this thing and have letters from 14 different attorney firms saying it's a standard practice, why do we need the letter? What is the legal risk of not having the letter?
Well, the legal risk is, and I think the legal risk is very slim. I don't think there's a lot of risk here, but the legal risk is that IRS would come back and say that you misinterpreted the regulation, and now we're saying it's taxable. I would like something in writing. I mean, it's kind of to cover me.
Oh, I like risk aversion, yeah, but
because we all feel certain that it's not taxable, but I just want that comfort in knowing, and I understand how it's not taxable because it's a non-taxable investment. So if you went, or I went and invested in this product outside of these bonds, it would be a tax-free. So when we went to file our income tax return, we wouldn't have to file tax on it. So in my mind, I understand why it should be exempt from rebate, but I just want the comfort of knowing, and with the amount of money that we're going to earn here, I feel like $3,500 is an insurance policy. I guess that's the way I see it. I feel like it's an insurance policy, and for the amount of money we're going to earn, I think it's a relatively inexpensive insurance policy.
I got you. I'm just saying, we've already heard from our attorney that attorney says, it's okay, I'll give you the letter. And we've heard from the investment firm that maybe they can provide the 14 letters. I mean, to do the same thing the 15th time, I'm just wondering. I mean, I'm okay with it. I'm just wondering if it's necessary.
Well, everybody said it's okay. Nobody's put it in writing.
Yeah.
So I mean, I just like to have that security of knowing that I have something in writing to fall back on.
Yeah.
And in reality, if the IRS comes back, they'll probably come back after my tenure as the finance director here, and I won't have to deal with it. But I think it's my due diligence as the finance director that I should ask for that, have it in the file. If there ever is a problem, the next person down the line can pull it out and say, hey, we got an opinion on this. We felt like it was okay. We didn't do anything intentional to avoid rebates. Like I said, I see it as an insurance policy. We don't have to do it, and y'all can all agree not to do it. But I'm requesting that we do it.
I think, it's certainly, okay, there probably will be a fair amount of, hedges in this. I mean, I don't think in some of these other ones that we actually got like a written opinion, like on doing a tax and bond issue. But David, in any of your experience, have we gone that approach, or we'll just have it first of asking for a written opinion?
We have not seen clients request an opinion from counsel on this topic.
I would concur with Ms. Cersei's assessment. I think in the grand scheme of things, the amount that we think we're gonna earn in the relative amount, I mean, the chairman's authorized to spend up to 12.5 on our own regardless. I'm fine with spending the money, and I think that the testament that was laid out, it makes good financial decision. We've had other topics that I know we have asked to have secondary opinions in writing placed on different topics that don't ever even necessarily deal with finance. So I think it's a prudent decision, and I'm fine with expending the money.
All right, so our homework is to go ahead and get the letter, if at all possible, by Monday late afternoon, and then leave this on consent for the time being. And if you have any further questions, you can call Gabe or Alicia.
And I was going to point out on the schedule of cash that I provided in the financial report, when you look under the SPOS 2021, there's a construction fund 2021 with $30,428,000, and then the Georgia Fund 1 has $6,190,000. That's the $36 million we're talking about investing. So just so you know, you can see where that comes from.
Okay, if there's no further questions, we will go on to the agenda for November 7th, which the first one was 10.1 investment option, which we just discussed. So now we'll bring up our fire chief for some fire rescue equipment purchase. Thank you, Gabe.
Thank you.
Safe travels back.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having us here today. Come before you to talk about some radio equipment for the new apparatus that we purchased back in '22. We ordered 6 fire trucks, 2 ladders, 4 engines, or pumpers, and I was told that I hit that too much. So we've got 6 trucks coming in February and summer of 2024. We're asking that we go ahead and purchase the radios, the mobile radios that go in them, that stay in the trucks. And the reason we're coming to now, instead of bringing all of the equipment that we're asking for, is because we have about a 15 to 20 week lead time on the radios. So we will be coming back later for tools and equipment that are going to go on the trucks, and hoses and nozzles and everything else. But we're still getting that package together. We're going to put that all together in one package. That way we don't have to keep coming back. So the price for the 6 radios and all the installations and everything else is $41,486.58, and we're asking that we utilize the SPOS funds for that. The radios are direct from the Motorola manufacturer because that's the radio system that we use, and Metropolitan Communications will be the installers, and they're right here in town. And there is a 5-year warranty on the radios. Any questions?
So this is different above and beyond all that radio equipment that we approved several months ago, because this goes in the trucks that are...
This goes in the trucks, yes. So these are mobile radios, all the ones that go on your hip and you have the column mics, those are portable radios.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't need any of those right now. We'll probably add a couple more when we get the new trucks in, or when we get that package together for you.
Are y'all going to put this on a consent agenda? Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Chuck. All right, I'm going to call Danny Yates of Public Works to do 10.3 and 10.4 for us.
Thank you, Chairman, Commissioners. I want to start, take you back a little bit. At the August 1st meeting, you all approved us letting Balfour Beatty, the CM at risk at the administration building, handle the demolition readiness paperwork for us. At the time, the building was still full of occupant county offices. Since that time, everyone's been removed. We had to do another assessment to get to the areas that were not accessible once before. Once that assessment was done, the amount of money come back more than anybody had anticipated. So what I'm here asking you tonight is we can continue to let Balfour Beatty continue overseeing the readiness, or we can kind of do it in-house as far as the county contract with the demolition company that's gonna do it and handle them directly through the county. It will save us, according to this, approximately $65,000.
Mr. Yates, on the topic, so essentially, I think we always worry about public works. You stretch thin, you got a lot going on in the county, but this is more an administrative item that you're handling, not necessarily
Yes, sir.
crews having to physically do the work. And so the savings would simply come from doing the administrative work in-house. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Okay. So as the director, you don't have a problem, or you feel that you and your staff are well versed that you can take on the responsibilities?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Are y'all good putting this on a consent agenda?
Yep.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, we'll go to 10-4, the Safe Streets for All.
Yes, ma'am. And that we're going to move to a Tuesday. We did not have all our documents ready. Our committee met this afternoon. We will have everything complete, and it'll be on for Tuesday night.
Okay, perfect. And then 10-5 will also be on for Tuesday night for the Carroll County Library Board appointment. So at this point, I don't have anything else on the agenda, so I will adjourn the meeting.